Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 17, Part 2. Heartening myself, therefore, with the belief that this was nothing but the print of my own feet, and so I might truly said to start at my own shadow, I began to go abroad again, and went to my country house to milk my flock. But to see with what fear I went forward, how often I looked behind me, how I was ready, every now and then, to lay down my basket and run for my life, it would have made anyone have thought I was haunted with an evil conscience, or that I had most lately been terribly frightened. And so, indeed, I had. However, as I went down thus 2 or 3 days, and having seen nothing, I began to be a little bolder, and to think there was really nothing in it but my own imagination. But I could not persuade myself fully of this till I should go down to the shore again, and see this print of a foot, and measure it by my own, and see if there was any similitude or fitness, that I might be assured it was my own foot. But when I came to the place, first, it appeared evidently to me that when I laid up my boat, I could not possibly be on shore anywhere thereabout. Secondly, when I came to measure the mark with my own foot, I found my foot not so large by a great deal. But these things filled my head with new imaginings, and gave me the vapors again to the highest degree, so that I shook with cold like one in an ague, and I went home again, filled with the belief that some man or men had been on shore there, or in short, that the island was inhabited, and I might be surprised before I was aware. And what course to take for my security I knew not. Oh, what ridiculous resolutions men take when possessed of fear! It deprives them of the use of those means which reason offers for their relief. The first thing I proposed to myself was to throw down my enclosures and turn all my tame cattle wild into the woods, that the enemy might not find them, and then frequent the island in prospect of the same or the like booty. Then, to the simple thing of digging up my 2 cornfields, that they may not find such a grain there, and still be prompted to frequent the island. Then to demolish my bower and tent, that they might not see any vestiges of habitation, and be prompted to look farther, in order to find out the persons inhabiting. These were the subject of the first night's cogitation after I was come home again, while the apprehensions which had so overrun my mind were fresh upon me, and my head was full of vapors as above. Thus fear of danger is 10,000 times more terrifying than danger itself when apparent to the eyes, and we find the burden of anxiety greater, by much, than the evil which we are anxious about. And which was worse than all this, I had not the relief in this trouble from the resignation I used to practice, that I hope to have. I looked, I thought, like Saul, who complained not only that the Philistines were upon him, but that God had forsaken him. For I did not now take due ways to compose my mind, by crying to God in my distress, and resting upon his providence, as I had done before, for my defense and deliverance, which if I had done, I had at least been more cheerfully supported under this new surprise, and perhaps carried through it with more resolution. This confusion of my thoughts kept me waking all night, but in the morning I fell asleep, and having by the amusement of my mind been as it were tired and my spirits exhausted, I slept very soundly, and waked much better composed than I had ever been before. And now I began to think sedately, and upon the utmost debate with myself I concluded that this island, which was so exceedingly pleasant, fruitful, and no farther from the mainland than I had seen, was not so entirely abandoned as I might imagine, that although there were no stated inhabitants who lived on the spot, yet that there might sometimes come boats off from the shore, which either with design or perhaps never but when they were driven by crosswinds, might come to this place. That I had lived here 15 years now, and had not met with the least shadow or figure of any people yet, and that if at any time they should be driven here, it was probable they went away again as soon as ever they could, seeing They had never thought fit to fix there upon any occasion to this time, that the most I could suggest any danger from was from any such casual accidental landing of straggling people from the main, who, as it was likely if they were driven hither, were here against their will. So they made no stay here, but went off again with all possible speed, seldom staying one night on shore, lest they should not have the help of the tides and daylight back again, and that therefore I had nothing to do but to consider of some safe retreat, in case I should see any savages land upon the spot. Now I began sorely to repent that I had dug my cave so large as to bring a door through again, which door, as I said, came out beyond where my fortification joined to the rock. Upon maturely considering this, therefore, I resolved to draw me a second fortification in the same manner of a semicircle, at a distance from my wall, just where I had planted a double row of trees about 12 years before, of which I made mention. These trees, having been planted so thick before, they wanted but a few piles to be driven between them, that they should be thicker and stronger, and my wall would be soon finished. So that I had now a double wall, and my outer wall was thickened with a piece of timber, old cables, and everything I could think of to make it strong, having in it 7 little holes about as big as I might put my arm out at. In the inside of this, I thickened my wall to about 10 feet thick, with continual bringing earth out of my cave and laying it at the foot of the wall and walking upon it. And through the 7 holes I contrived to plant the muskets, which I took notice that I got 7 on shore out of the ship. These, I say, I planted like my cannon, and fitted them into frames that held them like a carriage, so that I could fire all the 7 guns in 2 minutes' time. This wall I was many a weary month of finishing, and yet never thought myself safe till it was done. When this was done, I stuck all the ground without my wall for a great way everywhere, as full of stakes or sticks of the osier-like wood, which I found so apt to grow, as they could well stand, insomuch that I believe I might set in near 20,000 of them, leaving a pretty large space between them and my wall, that I might have room to see my enemy, and they might have no shelter from the young trees if they attempted to approach my outer wall. Thus, in 2 years' time, I had a thick grove, and in 5 or 6 years' time, I had a wood before my dwelling, growing so monstrous thick and strong that it was indeed perfectly impassable. And no man of what kind soever would ever imagine that there was anything beyond it, much less a habitation. As for the way which I proposed myself to go in and out, for I left no avenue, it was by setting 2 ladders, one to a part of the rock which was low, and then broke in, and left room to place another ladder upon that. So when the 2 ladders were taken down, no man living could come down to me without hurting himself. And if they had come down, they were still on the outside of my outer wall. Thus I took all the measures human prudence could suggest for my own preservation. And it will be seen at length that they were not altogether without just reason, though I foresaw nothing at that time more than my mere fear suggesting to me. While this was doing, I was not altogether careless of my other affairs, for I had a great concern upon me for my little herd of goats. They were not only a present supply to me upon every occasion, and began to be sufficient to me without the expense of powder and shot, but also without the fatigue of hunting after the wild ones, and I was loth to lose the advantage of them, and to have them all to nurse up over again. To this purpose, after long consideration, I could think of but 2 ways to preserve them. One was to find another convenient place to dig a cave underground and to drive them into it every night, and the other was to enclose 2 or 3 little bits of land, remote from one another, and as much concealed as I could, where I might keep about 6 young goats in each place, so that if any disaster happened to the flock in general, I might be able to raise them again with little trouble and time. And this, though it would require a great deal of time and labor, I thought was the most rational design. Accordingly, I spent some time to find out the most retired parts of the island, and I pitched upon one which was as private indeed as my heart could wish for. It was a little damp piece of ground in the middle of the hollow and thick woods where, as I observed, I almost lost myself once before endeavoring to come back that way from the eastern part of the island. Here I found a clear piece of land, near 3 acres, so surrounded with woods that it was almost an enclosure by nature. At least, it did not want near so much labor to make it so as the other pieces of ground I had worked so hard at. And we'll go on with Chapter 18 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.